Welcome to A Sound Constitution with Mahir, Sharon, Katie, and Brandy on 101.7 CHLY Radio.
We are third-year nursing students at Vancouver Island University in Nanaimo.
We're here working to demystify health issues in and around your community.
Bringing you evidence-based information about your healthcare options. This information is for educational purposes and does not replace the advice of your primary healthcare provider.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another show of A Sound Constitution. I'm Sharon.
And I'm Katie.
And we will be the hosts for this show. Today we will be talking all about health literacy. Health literacy is the degree to which individuals have the capacity to obtain, process, and understand basic health information and services needed to make appropriate health decisions.
Today we'll be looking at the world of the internet, fake news, clickbaiting articles, health websites, and more. Does this story sound familiar? You're sitting at home. It's a quiet evening and you're checking your Facebook news feed. A link catches your eye. Why Tylenol is evil. You scan the article and you're disgusted, shocked, and intrigued. How could the healthcare system betray you like this? You get up and move to your medicine cabinet, ready to rid yourself of this medication. But wait, before you throw your pills down the toilet, here's a few things you should consider. Let's talk about navigating the internet in order to find credible health information. The internet is a wonderful resource, allowing a vast array of information to be at your fingertips. But how do you know that the information you get is correct? That you shouldn't just check out your Tylenol, so to speak. Are websites like Wikipedia, WebMD, Mayo Clinic, Medicine.net, and Healthline good places to go if you want to know what your symptoms mean? What about articles you find online? How do you know the website, author, and information is accurate, or at least reasonably trustworthy? How do you know if something is, as our friend to the south puts it, fake news? We're going to be helping you sort through those questions today.
But first, let's talk about our theme for this season of A Sound Constitution. We've decided to choose the social determinants of health. According to the World Health Organization, the social determinants of health are the conditions in which people are born, grown, work, live, and age. What these conditions look like varies from person to person and are shaped by the variety of social, economic, and political systems and policies.
We nursing students have been studying them in our program since year one, and we've really seen how influential these are on the well-being of people.
Exactly, and although there are so many social determinants of health, about 12 of them, today we'll be focusing on education and health services. Education plays an important role in our health. Not only does education shape our opportunities for employment, it also helps us make better decisions when it comes to our health. Education helps us develop literacy, which is important enough for everyday life, but when it comes to reading and understanding health information, solid literacy skills are crucial.
Education will help with understanding and decision-making in people's lives. For instance, someone knowing what kind of nutrients are in foods so they can decide and know what they are eating.
Exactly, but not only that. Education provides us with the knowledge of how to access the various resources that are available to help us with our physical and mental health, and in general. People with higher education tend to have more broad foundation that will help them to better understand ways to keep healthy. Education is also interrelated with other social determinants of health. Some of them include incomes, job security, and working conditions, which can all affect health in their own way.
Not only are these individuals better equipped to deal with the stresses of life, but they also usually have greater access to healthy lifestyle choices like the healthy foods we talked about earlier, and also recreational activities. Access to health services plays an important role in the lives of everyone. In Canada, a universal health care system is designed to spread the costs of healthcare across the country and create access to health service for everyone. This is particularly beneficial for people with lower incomes who might not be able to afford private health care. The Foundation for Healthcare is based on principles outlined in the Canada Health Act. These principles include universality, portability, accessibility, comprehensiveness, and public administration. Basically, these principles mean that health services should be available to everyone, everywhere. However, there are only select services that are covered, and private health insurance is often needed to have the costs of many services, such as dental or other medications, to be covered.
On this show, we're trying to improve education and health literacy. We're hoping that by providing this information, we'll help fill in the gaps for people who don't have formal education, although obviously we can't replace formal education.
On the bottom line, we encourage our listeners to use resources such as the internet as a source to educate themselves about their health.
And we will show you exactly how to do that.
The internet has been around for 40 years and has been widely used for approximately the last 20. For many, it's a common and arguably inseparable part of modern-day life. We use the internet to help us cook, answer questions, talk to friends and family, play games, read books, and an infinite amount of other things as well.
I use it for cooking, like looking up recipes. I look at art online. I listen to music. I play video games, and I watch TV shows like just on the internet.
It's like so convenient and have all these things in one place, and it's pretty easy to use once you got the hang of it. The internet has been a platform for free speech and opinions, and once implemented, it can give almost unlimited information to all those who have access to it.
Even in the developing world, the internet has been a tool to equalize the playing field and provide education. I mean, in a world where you necessarily have a library in every city in Africa, you might have internet access on one device at least, and you just reach so many resources that way, right?
Yeah, like actually a doctor, he was talking about information online, and he was telling me about how the internet was actually saving lives of this community in Africa, as a commonly held belief there was that if a child was really sick, with like diarrhea, vomiting, that they were withholding water and food because they thought, what's the point of giving this to them? Like, they're just going to expel it anyway, but like the actual thing you should do is keep hydrating them because they need that, because they're expelling it, they need it to be replenished. So like mothers are being able to access the internet and find this information from a good, reputable source. They learned that the best course of action was to give fluids, and so they started doing that and improved a lot of the health outcomes for the children who were sick. Also related to healthcare information, the Pew Internet and American Life Project reports that 80% of American internet users have used the internet to look up health information. I know I've done it.
You have too.
Yeah. Hung and Turvey wrote an article in 2015 that talks about this topic. They say that the benefits are that it empowers people as they are able to take their health into their own hands. It's good to use information as a supplement to your healthcare provider, provided you know that it's good information.
It does feel good to be able to access this kind of information for myself. It can alleviate any worry and give me some pointers as to how to take care of myself and make me feel better. Of course, there's only so much that it can give you, though, with milder sickness. If you're really ill, looking at a screen won't help.
Other benefits of using the internet that these authors say is that people who do this are better educated about their health and make better health decisions and are more confident when going to see the doctor. And when that information is accurate, it results in a person getting better.
Of course, though, the internet has its drawbacks as well. Because of the ability for everybody to publish information, there's a lot of inaccurate ones that can be easily accessed. Especially in the healthcare field, misinformation is a large problem. It can relatively benign, like you throwing out Tylenol pills, or it can be deadly, like replacing medications with home remedies.
An example of this is people who suffer from depression being told to abandon their medications and use meditation, nature therapy, stuff like that to treat it instead. I've seen lots of posts like this. Now, meditation, nature therapy, and other forms of positive thinking are not bad. But people who suffer from severe depression actually have a chemical imbalance in their brain and probably won't be able to get the balance back by themselves. Medications are used to help find that balance so people can move forward from depression. If someone with depression believes that they should stop taking their medications and then are not able to change their condition using just nature meditation, this failure mixed with their depression may actually trigger them to give up.
The Tylenol story was actually based on a true scare people had about extra strength Tylenol. Tylenol is, in fact, one of the most common drugs to OD on because it is in so many products. Make sure that you check the labels for acetaminophen before taking more. But used properly, Tylenol is a safe drug that can have many benefits for the user. We know about this because we're studying it in nursing programs. But how can you find out this kind of information if you're not in the program? Most people trust websites that are physician approved more than the ones that are not. But some websites are quite convincingly professional. Another problem that people have with using the internet is that they might think that their doctor will disapprove of them doing this research, and so may not discuss their findings with their physician or avoid getting to their physician. Using the tools that we will give you today to assess websites and learn about your own health is a good thing. Healthcare providers appreciate a well-educated patient, and most should be willing at least to discuss your findings to help filter any misinformation that you might have slipped through. Another flaw with the internet is that anyone can post anything. People don't know that the extent of their readers' knowledge and critical thinking. They may post something like a joke. If you've ever heard of trolling, that's basically what it is. But then it goes viral and other people start believing and following it.
A famous example of using scary scientific language and half-truths to push a point was a high school student who did a science fair project demanding a ban on dihydrogen monoxide. He said it caused excessive sweating, urination, acceleration of corrosion. He said 100% of people who drink this die, and it's a major component of acid rain. It's been found in cancerous tumors. It's a byproduct of burning jet fuel, and it's used to power nuclear reactors, generate electricity, power cars, and yet it's widely used in many foods and drinks. He successfully rallied his classmates to ban this product, despite the fact that dihydrogen monoxide is the scientific name for water. All of the student statements were true, however they were presented in a way to create fear and bias. This kind of marketing can be used in all sorts of promotions. I saw one the other day talking about processed food. The presenter used scary scientific language and said these products were used in yoga mats and other things, however they didn't produce any solid facts on why they were bad. Now I'm not saying processed foods are healthy, but this campaign was not very well done.
Vaccines are another famous one and are highly controversial even today. One study correlated, and correlation is not a causation as many people would think, that correlates vaccines to autism. The study was proven wrong over and over, but got enough traction that people started believing it. This study powered the modern-day anti-vaccination movement, which exposes the unvaccinated people to the harms of diseases that should have been wiped out years ago. Another scare tactic used by people against vaccinations is thermosil, a compound of mercury that is found in vaccines. It is proven to be safe in small, tiny amounts. However, people still say that because mercury is poisonous, that vaccines are poisonous. Elemental sodium explodes in contact with water, and chlorine gas kills hundreds of thousands in the world wars. However, when mixed together, they make salt. Make sure that you don't take scary words and correlations at face value, but look up facts to see what the truth is. I mean, really, people try to use the word chemicals, but in reality, everything is chemicals.
Mm-hmm. Or like using like the scientific name of things to make them sound more scary, but like everything has a scientific name. Like dihydrogen monoxide is a scary sounding name, but it just means water.
Exactly, and NaCl, which is sodium chloride, sounds like a chemical, but it's table salt.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
We want to know where you guys find your health information, so we've sent out our field team, Brady and Mahir, to interview people around town about where they find their health information.
Hey you!
Who, me?
Yeah, you! We want to hear what you have to say, because
Your opinion matters!
Where do you look for health information?
Lots of the time I use the internet. I also consult family. I have lots of family that are in the medical field. My brother is a doctor, and my mother and sister are both nurses. And so kind of finding that kind of connection to the health industry really is helpful, and they can kind of guide my searches too.
For the most part online, I'll typically do a couple Google searches. I'll check normally the first 3 or 4 results, and if it seems concerning, sometimes I'll actually consult the doctor, but typically it doesn't go that far, and I'll let it go a couple days.
Generally, I look for health information online or at the the health facility here on campus at VIU generally.
Where do you look for your health information?
I usually look it up on the health insurance websites to see what's covered and what's not.
Mostly online. I follow a fitness model. She's basically a Colombian fitness model, and I've been her client for almost 2 years now.
So yeah, generally online through Google or any other search engine.
How do you know if you can believe what you read online about health information?
Oh, I don't. It's very, very sketchy, because you can find any answer you want online. If you phrase it a different way, you'll get completely different answers, so it's completely unreliable.
Similar to what I'm saying about consulting family, I kind of like to poll them and see what they say, if they believe it or not, or if they kind of, because they have their own opinions, and theirs are much more educated than mine are, and so kind of developing that understanding as well.
Generally, if I'm looking online, I'll look at multiple sources and kind of come to some sort of commonality, and and look at the reputability of what I'm looking at as well.
How do you know if you can believe what you read online about health information?
I usually read them and I make them in practice, as in whichever I read regarding the exercises or the diet or the eating schedules, I follow them. If I see changes, positive or negative, then accordingly I believe them. Not just primarily like if I read something online, I'll just believe it blindly. I'll adapt it. If it affects me positive way or in a negative way, I'll make the changes.
I find it really tough to kind of take things at the face value. So for me, it's all about sources. If I can't find the sources, then I'm not likely to believe any of it. So it's all sources for me.
I usually don't. So what I do is I call them and I ask them on the phone to get more clarity.
If you look up health information online and self-diagnose, are you as likely to go see your healthcare provider, and why?
Not as likely, and if I do go, it's some gauge to be where I'm at, but probably not as likely to go, yeah.
It does depend on how serious I find it out to be. If it is something that I've self-diagnosed and kind of consulted my family about as being very minor, like just a cold or something, usually not. But if it's something that I can't figure out or they can't figure out, then it's more serious and I usually have to go figure it out with a healthcare provider.
Maybe if it comes from a government website, those we hope at least are going to be a bit stronger research backed and things like that. But I mean, if something says symptoms should last 10 days and it's persisted a bit longer, then yeah, I'll sometimes go to the clinic and just get some kind of confirmation.
If you look up health information online and make a self-diagnosis, are you as likely to go see your healthcare provider?
Absolutely.
If I ever do make a self-diagnosis, I would probably be less likely, and I know that that's not exactly beneficial. But yeah, I would say I'd be less likely to go see a healthcare provider.
Yeah, of course, as in touch wood, if it's not a worst case scenario, then yeah. But most of the times I don't. As in based on my body type, I usually work out 5 to 6 times a week, so I don't fall sick, touch wood, easily. But even if I do, as in being the worst case scenario, yeah, why not?
Wow, it seems like a lot of people use the internet to look up their symptoms. I am glad to hear that regardless of their self-diagnosis, most people would still consult their healthcare provider or seek more information. This is exactly how the medical information online should be treated. Next, we will be talking about trustworthy websites and how to not look for information on your health online. But first, here is Painted Gold by Fake Shark from the album Liar. That was Painted Gold by Fake Shark from the album Liar. If you're just tuning in, this is a Sound Constitution on 101.7 CHLY Radio, where we're talking about the internet as a health information source. But first, we want to talk to you about asking people for medical advice on internet websites like Reddit, Facebook, and Yahoo Answers. Basically, the bottom line is, don't do it.
Yeah, the people you're asking could be anyone with any kind of background. They could give you advice that might be completely wrong. If you have medical questions, always ask your healthcare provider instead.
So we decided to go online and looked up what people are asking on the internet, specifically on Yahoo Answers, and more specifically, medical questions. Here are some of them. I hugged my boyfriend. Am I pregnant?
I have ate 2 whole tangerines in about 2 hours. What will happen to me?
I was bitten by a turtle when I was a young lad. Can I still drink orange juice?
And my favorite, how long does it take for a woman to grow testicles?
This all shows that people are looking up information online and asking strangers about things that they might be wondering about their health. And it clearly shows that there are gaps in knowledge.
Yeah, I hope the tangerine and the turtle ones are like jokes, like troll questions. But I could see like preteens or people like that asking the other questions regarding hugging resulting in pregnancy or women's testicles. Moving on, we're going to talk about how to trust a website. With the vast amount of websites like Wikipedia, WebMD, MedicineNet, Healthline, etc., how do you know if you can trust a website that you're visiting? The easiest way is to look at the ending of the URL. Here's a quick rundown. This is from How to Geek. .com. .com means .commercial. Mostly for-profit websites use this. The issue is, they're for profit. They could be motivated to make money and have you stay on their website and get you to click on ads. Some websites will do and say whatever they need to accomplish this. Clickbait often falls under this category, but we'll talk a bit about that later. You should generally look at .com websites with a critical eye, as they may exaggerate, exclude, or lie to keep your attention. Not all .com websites do this. Some present true and verified information. Merely qualified professionals post on .com sites. You must use your critical thinking when navigating and be aware that they are making money.
The next one is .org. Org means organization, usually used for non-for-profit organizations. Being not-for-profit, they're not making money based on the time that you're spending on their website. Thus, they have less incentive to lie or exaggerate or to just try to keep you around. They generally present true and verified information.
Next, we have .edu. EDU stands for education. These include educational institutions, colleges, and universities in the United States. These are a great source of information as it's often presented by well-educated professionals and faculty. These sites present verified, true, and beneficial data and have nothing to gain from you visiting their site. The only drawback of this is that sometimes they use very specific or high-level language that can be quite difficult to understand.
The next one is .ca or .gov or .uk. These are government websites. Canadian educational institutions and governments both use .ca. These are also highly reputable sites with a high standard of information presented. These are also great websites to get your information from.
Some other ways of screening accurate information and websites are certifications. There are some certifications that trusted websites have from like Health on the Net and Trustworthy Accountability Group. You can help give legitimacy and standards to website. The only problem with this is sometimes the certifications themselves are not reputable, so you do have to look into that a bit.
How often a site is maintained. If it hasn't been updated in 10 years, it's most likely outdated. And we most often forget that. I mean, even looking at articles that we have to look up for school and stuff, we sometimes don't look at when it was published. And if it was published like 20 years ago, it might be out of date, you know?
Yeah, like it's just like the context, right? Another thing is authors. If it shows that the authors are listed, you want to look at who they are. Like, are they professionals, doctors, nurses, pharmacists? If you see those, then it's probably like true and verified information. And if there's no author listed, you kind of want to question that as well. Like, why aren't they giving you a source of like where this is coming from? And if you know the author, you can look them up to see if they have any biases that might influence the information they're giving. And if they're not giving you an author, you can't do that.
Another question that you should keep in mind when looking at health-related information is if the site is associated with a for-profit organization, university, or even a government. For-profit organizations can present inaccurate information, and sometimes it's a little hard to distinct between what's for-profit and what's not for-profit.
Mm-hmm.
But using these guidelines is always a good way to start.
Yeah. You also want to look at, like, does the information you're reading, does it make sense? Is it grammatically correct? Is it well presented? Is there spelling errors? Like professional websites put effort into keeping up these things. Now, just because you don't see spelling errors and stuff like that, that doesn't mean that they're telling the truth. But if you see something that looks a little fishy, it's probably a little fishy.
Yeah, exactly. And if the site is riddled with spelling errors, it may be just riddled with factual errors too.
Mm-hmm.
It should have the right context as well, and it should be applicable, have utility and relevance.
Yeah, like if it's a lot of information, but it's not actually telling you what to do with that, that's not really going to be beneficial to you. Whereas if it gives you like things that you can actually do, say like, so it's about, taking medications for a cold, it actually tells you what medications they are. And, that's a good website.
And it should have gone through an editorial process, which basically gets verified by medical professionals that read over it and ensure that the information on there is correct. Another word for this kind of thing is peer-reviewed, where professionals of that area are looking at the article or the piece that was written, and they approve that this information is accurate.
Mm-hmm. Like, it's basically like accountability. You're holding up what you're writing to the rest of the community to say, yeah, you know what, that makes sense. And then the last thing, it should be accurate. It should note if it's like holding any information back or if it's missing gaps in data. It should have the best evidence possible, not just the select evidence that supports its own views. And it should indicate the sources. You really want to know where they're getting their information from. So these sites are all reasonably trustworthy. One flaw that all of these sites have, however, is that they just present information without being able to critically think, apply experience, and actually diagnose. A sore throat could be from a cold, or it could be a symptom of something a lot worse. Without the training and experience that medical professionals are equipped with, there's no way that you can tell. That's why we recommend that if you have a concern or symptom that's not going away after a few days, you should go speak to your healthcare provider. Also, another study in clinical otolaryngology found that these websites only had a 70% accuracy when diagnosing.
I would recommend healthfinder.gov. It's a government-run website, so it takes to be trustworthy and professional. Although the resources there are from the U.S., it has useful information like a health quiz and a place where you can put your age and your gender, and it would recommend tests that you should be taking. It also has practical, easy to use, and accurate health information and advice. Realize that this is a lot of information. If you're feeling overwhelmed and can't remember all of this, just remember, take a step back and ask, who wrote this? Are they educated? Do they have any credentials? Why did they write this? Could they be motivated by other factors? Even asking these questions will help you evaluate most things, so you can ask more if you need to. And if you're unsure, the best thing to do is to call a medical professional, and not your friends on Facebook. Here in Canada, you can dial 811 to talk to a nurse about non-emergency concerns. It's a great resource if you're unsure about your symptoms. If the nurse does think that you should go to the emergency room, she will let you know so. The next topic we'll be talking about is self-diagnosing. Cyberchondriac is somebody who is obsessed with self-diagnosing on the internet. There are even kits that people can buy to claim to diagnose many diseases, from STIs to Alzheimer's diseases, that can manifest with various symptoms depending on the patient. And an example of this is an allergic reaction. These kits are not usually recommended because of the margin for error is wider than in the clinical setting. Basically, it doesn't work as well as going to just a clinic for it.
Yeah, when you can ensure that things are going to be sanitary and well handled, like mailing something in isn't very guaranteed that it's going to be sanitary.
Basically. So also, symptoms checkers, as we've seen before, don't have 100% accuracy and are complicated by the fact that diseases manifest with different symptoms depending on the person. So from, my throat hurts, I might have a cold, to, you might have throat cancer.
Mm-hmm. And everything in between, like allergic reactions. Like, allergic reactions are a great example of lots of different symptoms manifesting in different ways. Like, you can get hives, you can get breathing problems, sore throat, flushing, you can get itchy mouth, you could feel nauseous, you could get dizzy. You could get all of them, or you could just have one of them, or you could have a mix of different ones. Like searching for nausea could lead to very different results than hives or breathing problems. Healthcare professionals teach patients with allergies what symptoms or mix of symptoms to look for when they react, to diagnose it as an emergency. As well as that, some symptoms, especially nausea, are symptoms of an almost infinite amount of medical conditions. And that's why it's not that accurate to diagnose yourself online.
Therefore, it is common when trying to self-diagnose that the inaccuracy itself leads to unnecessary worry and stress, which is in turn bad for your health.
Mm-hmm. The other interesting point that England's The Sun pointed out was the fact that bipolar and depression as internet searches were some of the most searched, but also listed in the most embarrassing search topic. Some websites can offer support and acceptance to people with mental illness. The internet is a good resource to start talking to someone about a topic that they may consider taboo or embarrassing, such as sexual health, especially for teenagers, and mental health. It may be a starting point to start thinking about it and then help them build up courage to talk to a healthcare professional about it.
Bottom line is that when you just want simple information and you know how to critically look at a website, looking online can be helpful, with some articles talking about the massive amount of money saved when people visit these sites. Our advice would be, if it seems serious or persistent, don't rely on the internet. Go to your doctor.
If you're just tuning in, this is the Sound Constitution on 101.7 CHLY, and we're talking about the internet as a health resource. In our next segment, we'll be talking about how to critically assess all types of literature online, whether it's news, articles, health blogs, etc. We will talk about paywalls, clickbaiting, and fake news. The information will help develop critical thinking as you browse the internet, and therefore help your health literacy as you look at health articles.
Our next topic is going to be about paywalls. These are the barriers between people and accessible, credible informations. Paywalls are a method of restricting access to some internet content via a paid subscription. This is a new method of getting more revenue out of readers, as there was a decline in print readerships. Some websites that have paywalls are New York Times, The Wall Street Journal, and Financial Times. Many people have been critical of this method, but not with the ethical lens, but rather with the success of failure as a business. A study completed by the Canadian Media Research Consortium, called Canadian Consumers Unwilling to Pay for News Online, directly asked Canadians and their views on paywalls. Out of 1,700 Canadians, 92% would just rather find a free alternative. In the US, 82% of Americans felt similarly.
Although there are paywalls for news outlets, the scholarly papers and credible publications are usually behind a hard paywall of databases. Databases often have thousands of articles which have been published professionally and reviewed by other professionals. We, as university students, have access to these databases, so we can do credible research.
Yeah, but the thing is, other people don't have these subscriptions if they're not a part of a university. So it puts them behind
That's like an education barrier, right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And I'll be talking about it a little bit because there was an article on The Guardian that outlines how publishing science behind paywalls is immoral. Just straight up immoral. He calls out scientists to question publishing their articles behind paywalls, as the purpose of scientists is to bring new knowledge into the world. He says, and I quote, that a society that cares more about preserving its own budget than about the field it supposedly supports has lost its way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like why can only rich people get this scientific information? Like, science should just be like available for all people who are interested. You shouldn't have to be like disadvantaged just because you can't or you don't pay for a paywall.
I mean, what's the purpose of science if you can't? I mean, science's purpose is to bring humanity forward. Mm-hmm. And if you are putting these barriers up between people and education, what are you creating? You're just creating a segregated community between the scholarly and the people who are poor and don't have the money.
Well, and it's like in countries where women aren't allowed to study. It's like, well, there's 50% of your population that isn't contributing to like the workforce and the field of science.
Exactly.
Anyway, ultimately, keeping articles and news behind paywalls keeps the people who cannot pay for it outside. People who live in poverty, who need the education and do not have access to these resources, are the ones who are at a disadvantage. This is another example of how the social determinants of health can affect how healthy you are. Next, we will talk about the concept of fake news, lazy journalism, and clickbaits. But first, here's I Don't Know by the Sheepdogs, off their album Learn and Burn.
was I Don't Know by the Sheepdogs off their album Learn and Burn. If you're just tuning in, this is A Sound Constitution on 101.7.
Next up, we're going to be talking to an expert. Jean Blackburn is a local librarian, and she has a lot of knowledge when it comes to finding information on the internet. We sent out Mihir to interview her and find out what she knows.
So Jean, can you tell us a little about yourself?
Sure, yeah. My name's Jean Blackburn. I've been a librarian at VIU since 2001. I'm the liaison librarian to the health programs here at VIU, and I love working with the students in all of our health programs. I think access to quality health information is one of the most powerful life tools at our disposal, and I find it very rewarding that my work contributes to this. And over the past year and a half, I've experienced that power in a very personal way as well. My dad's sick with cancer, with terminal cancer actually, and it has really reinforced for me how critical it is to be able to find and use good information to inform and advocate for good healthcare choices for you and your family.
Interesting, thank you. So, how can the average Joe best use the internet to their advantage to attain reliable and true health information?
The internet's an incredibly powerful and empowering tool. It can play a very important role in how we manage self-care and decisions about our health, but there are risks as well. The fact that the internet has made it so easy to make information available means there's a mix of reliable and unreliable or even dangerous information out there. When it comes to your health and the health of your family, that's a big risk. So my message is, take advantage of this incredible tool, the internet, but learn how to evaluate information for reliability, accuracy, and currency. It's up to you.
Right. So that brings us to our next question. What makes a source or a website reliable for health information? How would you differentiate WebMD from Wikipedia or Health Canada?
So that's a big question. So first of all, when we're looking at any online health source, we need to ask ourselves some questions, some tough questions. So off the top, who's written this information and why should we trust them? What are their qualifications? Are they trying to sell us something? We need to look for authority in the information. So look for information about the author. Does the website tell you the author's name and credentials? On WebMD, for instance, articles are usually written by a journalist, but they're reviewed by a medical doctor. You should be able to identify the author and satisfy yourself that there's expertise backing up the content. WebMD also provides information about the organization, the editorial team, editorial policies, and its team of medical experts. And that's available right on its website. And that's a good thing to look for. Looking for about us or who we are type of links, often they're at the bottom of the page, so you have to scroll all the way down to find that information. But that can really give you a sense of who the people are behind their website, what their motivations are, and a little bit about the organization too, and what they're trying to achieve. That can tell you a lot about how much you should be able to trust the content. If you can't find any information about who is writing the content and why you should trust in their expertise, I wouldn't be inclined to trust that information. I actually think Health Canada does a pretty poor job of this on their website. I mean, I place a certain amount of authority in Health Canada just because of who they are. They're our government. They have a mandate to protect our health, and they have an important role in Canadian society. Now, I know that not everyone would feels the same way, but that's my personal, that's where I'm coming from. But they could do a much better job of providing authorship information and references on their online health articles. I've found that for a long time. I think they could do a much better job. My favorite health information website for consumer health information, if I've got a bump on my hand or a cut on my lip, I like mayoclinic.org.
Interesting. So you kind of touched on this, but do you have anything else to add on how we can tell reliable health information from an unreliable health source?
Absolutely. So we talked about authority, and that's one very important piece. But you should also ask yourself, what is the evidence? So when it comes to health, we need more than someone's word. So we just talked about looking for evidence of authority or expertise. That's very important. But it's also very important to look for signs of bias, to ask yourself what the author has to gain by providing this information to you. Is the author or the website trying to sell you something? Is the information politically motivated? A reliable information source should also give you a really clear sense of the evidence behind the information. In other words, it should tell you which studies form the basis of the information provided. And ideally, it should give you enough reference information that you can track down the studies yourself and read them for yourself. Also, look for information about how current the information is. There are constant developments in health sciences, and it's important to seek out up-to-date information. If you can't find a publication date on an online health article, that would be a reason to question its reliability. I always recommend verifying information in at least one other source you feel you can trust. If you can't find any backup verification for information you find online, you probably shouldn't rely on it.
All right. So you mentioned look at other sources. So for members of the public who don't have access to institutional databases, what are some ways that they can access credible health information for the community, such as health articles that might be behind a paywall?
Yeah, that's a great question. Your local public library is a source of credible health information. So it will have up-to-date print reference books, but also, and more importantly, online databases that give you access to reliable health information. Also, it's worth keeping in mind that community members are also free to use the VIU Library search engine right on the library website to find references to good academic health information, which they can then access by visiting the library and downloading articles from one of our computers in the library building. So that information is actually available to the community. There's just a couple of extra steps. There are also excellent free comprehensive health search engines online, such as PubMed, which is maintained and made available by the U.S. National Library of Medicine and National Institutes of Health. That's an excellent resource.
All right. So it is accessible. You just got to go through the hoops like coming into the VIU library, for example.
Yeah, the VIU library we maintain some of the same but many different resources than the public library. So community members should be looking at both of those library sources in their communities. The VIU library, it's an academic library, so we subscribe to a lot of academic journals, information published by academic publishers, and in there is a lot of the latest, most up-to-date, most cutting-edge health information. So it's important for community members to realize that they do have access to that. They can sit in the comfort of their own homes and do their searching on the VIU Library website for free. And then when they have a list of articles that they want to access, they can pop in to their local campus, their local VIU Library campus, and we can help you get set up on a computer and download those articles onto a USB stick, for instance.
All right. So where can people in the community go to get help finding credible sources? I came to you because you're on campus unavailable, but where could someone in the community go?
Well, a librarian would say this, but I'm going to say ask a librarian. So you can phone, email, or drop into your local public library branch for help finding the right information to solve your problem. And community members are always welcome at the VIU library as well, and the librarians there can help.
All right, that's good to know. So how do we know we can believe the information we read online?
There's no black and white rule, unfortunately, that will tell you for sure what the truth is, and I'm putting that in quotes, truth. Health science is complicated and learning more all the time. Key piece is, can I see the evidence behind any given piece of information? In other words, is my source showing me the background and basis for the information presented? And is that background reliable in turn based on the evaluation criteria we've already talked about? In academic research, we can see the evidence used to reach conclusions and recommendations for practice. And if we can't, it's a big problem, and we should question the trustworthiness of the source.
Right. So earlier you mentioned, you talked about some of the resources like WebMD and Health Canada. What are some commonly used health resources that people should avoid when looking for reliable information?
Well, I personally mistrust many alt health sites like Mercola.com. I don't believe that there is good evidence to back up the information on that site. Also, sites like Goop. You hear a lot about that in the media. There's a lot of cachet, and they're very attractive websites. But a lot of the health-related information there is not evidence-based, and I wouldn't rely on it. Again, there's no hard and fast rules, and we all need to be prepared to assess sites for ourselves and make the right decisions for us. I'll tell you a site that I have a conflicted relationship with, and that's drwile.com. So that's Andrew Weil. So, I recognize he has medical credentials, and I recognize his credentials and his expertise, and I've actually read a couple of his books, and I've gotten a lot out of them. I think he has a lot to offer, but his site tries to sell me vitamins, and that degrades my trust in the website. So every now and then, it's not one of my main health sources online, but I do use his website, but I use it very critically. I always take what's there with a grain of salt. I realize that selling is a motivation behind a lot of the information there, and I always verify it with one or more other sources I can trust.
Right. On websites that try to sell you things, do you feel that they'd have any motivation to skew the information to have you spend more time on their site to expose you to more advertisements?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of websites make their revenue by click-throughs and ad revenues. And so you'll find so-called clickbait headlines that often make outrageous claims or just make you want to click on it to find out what's behind it. And yeah, I mean, the motivation behind that is not really to educate. It's not really to provide good information. It's to create revenues for the site.
Right.
So if you find yourself on a site where you're constantly clicking down and clicking more, following these tantalizing headlines, I would tend to give it a miss and go seek out a site that's just going to give me good, solid information in a straightforward way.
Right. So along those lines, how do we know if authors are being sponsored by, for example, pharmaceutical companies that may bias their research?
Well, so we talked about, earlier in the interview, we talked about authority and looking around for evidence of who wrote it, what their expertise is, what their credentials are. If a website is not giving you any of that information, then you really don't know. Now, in academic sources, academic researchers are required to disclose conflicts of interest so that they've received funding, and a lot of pharmaceutical company funding goes directly to academics and is published in the form of academic articles. So if you're reading that article, you will see up front, actually it's usually at the end of the article, but you'll see a clear statement of conflicts of interest, or if it's the case, a statement that there is no conflict of interest. But they have to be really upfront about that. So look for those disclosure statements. If you can't find any information about who authored an online health article or how they were funded or what's behind it, that's a red flag. Conflicts of interest should always be disclosed, and reliable health sources will do so.
Right. So many people turn to Wikipedia for the health information. What are your thoughts on that? How should it be used? Is it reliable? And to what extent can it be?
I love Wikipedia. I think it's one of the most interesting phenomena of our time, and I'm looking at it as from the point of view of an information professional, because it is a crowdsourced reference book, basically. Right. And there's no way you could ever get the kind of scope and the kind of detail that you get in Wikipedia using any other publication method or any other editorial method. Of course, it's Wikipedia content is open to anyone. Anyone can create a Wikipedia account, create an article, edit an article. So you really have to approach the content on Wikipedia critically, and you have to evaluate it according to these criteria that we've already talked about. But the other piece about Wikipedia is that it's very, very transparent. It is very easy to do that evaluation because Wikipedia lays out for you entire history of an article, who's writing them. If you get multiple people contributing to an article, you can see the history of all of their disagreements, right, and why they feel their information is more credible than someone else's. So it's really laid out for you what's behind it. Wikipedia will also put up warnings if it feels that an article is not adequately referenced, if it is not adequately detailed, or if they feel that somebody has been tampering with it with ulterior motives. So you will get those upfront warnings that help you in that evaluation process. And there are a lot of experts contributing to Wikipedia, and it's a valuable information source. But again, the onus is on us. It's up to us to approach it critically, go through that evaluation process. And again, I would always, so Wikipedia, for instance, is a place that I would probably use as part of an exploration of a health topic. I might start there, take what I can from it, but I would always verify it with other sources.
Right. So you feel it does have value as long as you can compare to other sources and make sure that both sources have the same information to make sure it's correct.
Absolutely, yeah. I wouldn't run out and buy a particular bottle of pills just because I read about it in a Wikipedia article. Yeah.
So before we end off, are there any other common questions or advice that you would give to the public regarding using the internet for health purposes or health literacy?
Yeah, I would say don't feel you have to accept the first couple of pages of a Google search result, that is all the information you have available to you. Take advantage of libraries and their online databases. A lot of health information is not available for free, and libraries are paying for it on your behalf, so take advantage of it. I'm a librarian, so I believe in libraries, and so it's not surprising that I would say that. But coming from that personal place again, I mean, I can say with a lot of certainty that through information I accessed through our library, through BIU Library, information that isn't available on the public internet through a Google search, my dad has gotten at least a year's worth of quality life he probably wouldn't have had otherwise. So
Interesting.
You and your family are worth it.
So thank you so much for your thoughts, Jean. We appreciate having you on the show.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
That was Jean Blackburn, librarian for VIU Health and Human Services programs on how to find reliable information online.
She had a lot of good insight, and we're going to be talking about some of them more in depth as the show goes on. Thanks again, Jean.
Newsjacking. It's basically piggybacking on successful brands in the news. An example we are all familiar with is Trump. For example, an article, a headline like Donald Trump secretly told the New York Times what he really thinks about immigration. If you strip the sentence out, it's basically someone important secretly told someone or something what he really thinks about an important topic.
Yeah, you could put any person of interest or any news media person at any topic that could be controversial in order to draw people in.
Exactly, and Trump is a great subject that people now use to create a bombardment of articles. It is popular to be against Trump. It's in the media everywhere, in the news outlets, on prominent websites, and in our culture. Therefore, journalists find a lot of content when talking about Trump.
There was an article in the Washington Post calls, "Trump's Gold Game tells us an awful lot about Trump." This is a classic way that journalists are taking advantage of the popularity of Trump-related articles and essentially creating biased, polarizing journalism just to get readers.
But sometimes news outlets get a little manipulative with their coverage. An example of this is how CNN edited a video to make it appear that Trump overfed a fish during a visit with the Japanese Prime Minister, when in the real video, the Prime Minister did exactly what Trump did afterwards, which was dump the whole food canister into the water, which was a little weird, but the Prime Minister of Japan did that, so Trump just followed it. And CNN took that video and just edited out the Prime Minister doing it and just showed that Trump did it, and the article just said that he overfed the fish.
Now, we're not taking any positions on Trump. He's just a great example of how the media takes advantage of current brands to create content. Perhaps that's why he's so paranoid about
fake news.
Satirical and absurdist websites. These websites rely on smart, fake, satirical headlines and articles that could be believed to be true. Of course, these websites present themselves as fake news outlets.
And there are a lot of them. One of the most famous ones is The Onion, with absurd satirical headlines such as "Wealthy teen nearly experiences consequence" and "Gay teen worried he might be Christian." These are meant to be absurd and satirical, and it's weird how some people actually think they're factual. I'm surprised when I see that people genuinely comment and don't understand that these are jokes.
We're just saying that there's a lot of purposeful misinformation online, and although they may look real on the surface, we encourage you to look up is X website satire. This is especially important when it comes to your health, and you will always want to double-check websites that you visit.
As we're winding down, we'll leave you guys with some resources that we've gathered about credible health on the internet. We've established that Mayo Clinic, WebMD, and Health Finder are trusted websites. Remember to check by the criteria that we've given you this episode. 811 is the nurse's line, which you can call if you're worried or have a non-emergency concern. Your local library is a good resource, as we heard from Jean Blackburn. So, to conclude, today we've talked about the internet and how to navigate it to your benefit. We had a wonderful interview with Jean Blackburn. We've talked about the internet's benefits, flaws, paywalls, how people are easily tricked on the internet, and fake news. Remember, the most important thing we learned today is to critically think about what you access and double-check if you're not sure against other websites or the trusted healthcare provider. We hope you learned something new listening to us here on A Sound Constitution on 101.7 CHLY FM. Make sure to join us next week as we talk about substance. If you liked what you hear on this episode and want to hear us talk about a specific health topic, make sure you contact us.
Thanks for listening to Sound Constitution on 101.7 CHLY.
Look for us on Facebook and Instagram.
Or check us out on YouTube for previous shows.
Tune in next Thursday from 10 to 11 for more from A Sound Constitution.
Bye for now.